Hello, Fordham Prep community. My name is Dr. Peter McGuire, and I am Fordham Prep class of 1989. And this is 5 questions from Fordham Prep. So the first question is, what is your current role at the National Institutes of Health? For what are you responsible? So first, I just wanted to point out that the NIH is America's research hospital, and it's located in Bethesda, Maryland. This is a government-funded organization where all patients who come to NIH are enrolled on a protocol where specific questions or investigations are being conducted about their particular disease. So my title at NIH is Investigator and head of the Metabolism, Infection, and Immunity section at the National Human Genome Research Institute. So I'm a physician scientist. As a physician, I'm board certified in pediatrics, in clinical genetics, and clinical biochemical genetics. And as a scientist, I use the methods of scientific inquiry to study disease. And the particular disease and patient population that I'm interested in are children with mitochondrial disease. So for mitochondrial disease, this goes back to freshman biology at Fordham Prep, where, if you remember, the mitochondria help make ATP. Well, these individuals with mitochondrial disease have an inability to extract energy from their food and make ATP. And as a result, they have multiple medical problems, most of which are neurologic. And infection can be quite life-threatening and even devastating in these children. Hence, we've been very busy with our patients during COVID-19. So what I do at the NIH is I lead a research program and group aimed at understanding why children with mitochondrial disease may have disease progression or decline during viral infection. So question number 2, where did your love of science come from? So I was someone who came to science a little bit later in my academic career, more so I think in college and in graduate school. And I certainly took science classes at Fordham Prep. And I was always an inquisitive kid who always wanted to know how things worked. And I used to take things apart and put them back together, et cetera. But I would say at Fordham, probably one of the formative experiences had to do with my senior service project. So as part of my service hours, I volunteered in my local town at the Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and where I learned essentially about what it meant to be an emergency medical technician. So I eventually went on to get my certification as an emergency medical technician. And I think what really appealed to me, about being an EMT and about these service hours in the Volunteer Ambulance Corps is really it was about the application of science to help others when they were sick or injured. Next question. What classes or experiences at Fordham Prep were most memorable? Did any shape your career path? Any individual teachers? It unfortunately was not a science class necessarily at Fordham Prep, although there are many wonderful teachers where I had learned a lot from them and are very thankful to them. But I would have to say one of the most memorable experiences really was my film study class in my senior year, which was taught by Father Pierce Brennan, who unfortunately is no longer at the Prep. But what Father Brennan did, for myself, and I think for other students in his class, is he imparted this love of old films and directors like Alfred Hitchcock or Stanley Kubrick or the Coen brothers. And as part of that class for our final grade, we can make a film. Now, Father Brennan gave very explicit instructions about that film and the content of that film. And basically what he said was, don't do comedy, it won't work. Well, of course we made a comedy. It was a slasher horror film, which was a comedy, which I made with some really good friends of mine. And I learned actually after leaving Fordham Prep that Father Brennan actually continued to show our film to subsequent classes because I guess he was so proud of it. And that's something that always stuck with me, in terms of my time at Fordham Prep. And I think what I learned from that is sometimes you have to listen to your gut and follow your passions. Next question, what can we learn from the current coronavirus pandemic about the role of public health organizations and why are they important? So that's a great question. So organizations like the NIH or the FDA or the CDC or the WHO, these are important organizations which provide leadership during these uncertain times. So these are organizations that contain highly trained individuals with many years experience in areas of infectious disease and medicine and epidemiology and public health, who really have dedicated their lives to serving others. And I think the current pandemic really highlights the role of science in decision-making and policy, as well as its role in educating the public. I think it's important to point out, during this pandemic that, science by its nature is not fixed in time. But it's really constantly moving, it's adapting, it's incorporating, new information for the purposes of providing guidance, essentially, during this pandemic and for public safety. Okay, next question. Dr. Anthony Fauci, a fellow Jesuit high school graduate, is one of the government's leaders in its fight against COVID-19. What about Jesuit education do you think prepared him and you to enter the fields you chose? So I always, consider myself to be in great company, especially when I'm mentioned along with Dr. Fauci. In no way do I compare myself to him. I think he's a wonderful leader. He's a great clinician and a great scientist. And I think we're very lucky to have his leadership during this time. I would say about, the Jesuit education, my life academic life at Fordham Prep was actually very rigorous. And a Jesuit education, taught me how to think and how to apply logic and reasoning to answer important questions, whether it be in medicine or in science, for the purposes of the betterment of humankind. But I think one of the main things that really stuck with me, which is, the drive to do this, the willingness to make personal and professional sacrifices, all that really comes from the Jesuit ethos of being a person for others. And that's something that has stuck with me since my time at Fordham Prep, has certainly informed my career choices and how I lead my life today. So I'd like to thank you for listening to me talk about my experiences at Fordham Prep. And I wish you all health during this trying time. And please make sure to wear masks and employ social distancing and wash your hands. Thank you very much.